Thank you all so much. You've been so patient all day, but I do believe this is a moment in history, or perhaps her story instead of his story. This has been remarkable, so elevating, and this month is International Women's Month. But last week was the first day of spring. It's time to plant, a time to reap, a time to sow. This is a time to plant peace like never before. And as a fifth-generation descendant of a California family, I am so honored to stand here on the soil of my country and in a beautiful way in which we're respecting the seeds we have in common as opposed to those which separate us. Those seeds, to me, were made very clear on International Women's Day, March 8th, when I walked the minefields of Angola. And with these two incredibly brave women and a mother of three, we placed our thumbs on that button and detonated 30 UXOs and one large missile. This is what women do. We bear the seeds of life, and it is not tolerable to live in a world where there's an estimated 110 million landmines in 60 countries. Many may say it's an impossible dream for me to stand here before you and be so audacious to say, across the way at Lincoln Memorial stands a statement, "I have a dream," by Martin Luther King. Well, I have a dream for a landmine-free world. Once the mines are removed, we can get down to the business of peace. This is a humanitarian, not a political statement. Landmines carry no flag. They know no politics. But all I know, as a mother of 4 and a grandmother of 7, that by removing the landmine from the soil, we also have to remove the landmines from our heart and from our minds, the political landmines. But we cannot leave them void, for we must replant them with love in our hearts, and when we get down on our knees, because I don't know how to plant standing up, but getting down on our knees, bowing to the earth, thanking the earth for what we have been given, and again, plant that seed. And from the heartland of America, where I received the World Food Prize with dear Ambassador Branstad and his son and the whole family here, this is about family. This is about family. And the greater family are the families in the world. And the mothers and fathers, as I speak, in Ukraine, where 30% of the land is mined. People are desperate. They want to go back. It's spring. I planted 2 years ago. I've got to go back. Who's going to feed my family? Boom. Reality. So we cannot talk about achieving the 17 Sustainable Development Goals without, in my heart, invoking the 18th. And that would have to be the eradication of landmines from the face of this earth. For children cannot walk fields, girls cannot be educated, we cannot have clean water in a minefield. So there's my dream, and I just, again, with Jan Hartke, who's here, if he raised his hand, his father was Senator Vance Hartke, and his vision after the Vietnam War was to create a U.S. Institute of Peace. Well, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with each and every one of us in this room. So let's get going on the business of peace. I'd like to introduce our very distinguished panelists here today. First and foremost is Karen Chandler. She is the director of the Office of Weapons Removal and Abatement in the Bureau of Political Military Affairs at the State Department. She is responsible for programs that address the threat of landmines and unexploded ordnance and strengthen United States national security by preventing illicit proliferation of small arms, light weapons, and manpads. Karen is a career member of the Executive Service. From 2008 to 2009, Karen served on the White House National Security Council staff as a director for combating terrorism. Other assignments at the U.S. Department of State include 2 tours of the provincial reconstructive teams, the PRTs, which I worked with in Afghanistan, and the Office of Special Representative of Muslim Communities and Counterterrorism Bureau. Our second distinguished guest has actually flown out from Hanoi. She is the director of all programs throughout Vietnam. Now, when I was a student in the 1970s at University of California at Berkeley, peace and love defined our generation. Yet there is no peace and love when 80% of the former DMZ is contaminated still by cluster munition and UXO. Sarah is for the past 10 years, has a vast experience in human and development sector, and for the past 5 years, supported, managed, and implemented humanitarian mine actions programs. She began her development career working to protect people from human trafficking in the Philippines. In 2019, she joined MAG in Lao PDR. And today she is, of course, the director of MAG Vietnam, a little jet lagged, but here from Hanoi. Thank you. Our next distinguished guest is Jonathan Granoff. He's been my dear friend since the days of Gorbachev visiting San Francisco. He is the president of the Global Security Institute and the representative to the United Nations of the World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates. He is a distinguished international lawyer and former professor of international law. Mr. Granoff received the 2020 Lifetime Achievement Award of the International Law Section of the American Bar Association, where he served as senior advisor to the Committee of National Security. He is also a founding member of the United Religions Voices for a Nuclear-Free World and recipient of various awards. I choke up introducing these next two because we detonated landmines, and I met their colleagues, a young woman who lost her face to a landmine at age 6. She thought it was a rock, she picked it up. And I cannot express from my heart the importance of eradicating landmines from the most heavily mined country in Africa, and that is Angola. I will first introduce Ngoie. Ngoie is the team leader of Angola. She was born on the border of Laos, and she spent her childhood in the DRC Congo because of war. In 2018, she was one of the first women that MAG hired as a deminer. She wanted to make the land safe for her family and children to walk. She diligently worked as a deminer and was elevated to team leader and then site supervisor. She has witnessed the employees grow from 1, you being the first deminer, to 62 women deminers in Angola. Wow. So that's just worth a round of applause. So we've spoken a lot today about women being examples and other women seeing women succeed. I think you'll hear their stories firsthand, but why would you go into demining? Couldn't you find a better job? It's dangerous. Well, she made it look so successful, and again, so there was another woman who came, and that's Janete Malichi, and she is deputy team leader of MAG. She was born in Luena in Moshiko province, and again, due to war, she spent her childhood as a refugee in Zambia. Following the war, she returned home to Luena and became a nurse at the General Hospital. But as a single mother of three girls, ages 10, 8, and 5, she wanted to make the land safe for her children to walk, so children wouldn't kick a soccer ball out of bounds. What do you tell a 6-year-old? Don't go there and pick it up. But if it's the only soccer ball in the community, mom's not looking, dad's not looking, boom. Reality. 2018, she applied as MAG's deminer, rose to the level of, again, deputy team leader, and I just have to say, she led me through the minefield, and that's why I'm here safely, because of the leadership of these two women. One of the closing visuals that I will forever hold in my mind is that after they did the demining, they did the quality assurance. and standing in a line holding black baskets, buckets, inch by inch. It was like a macabre Easter egg hunt. Now, I'm very, very fortunate. On Sunday, I'm gonna dye Easter eggs with my grandchildren. I'm gonna hide them in the grass. But I cannot imagine a world where these hidden seeds of terror are in the ground, tempting the footstep of a child. It takes 8 pounds to detonate a landmine, and that is the average weight of a newborn child. So let's begin the questions and how we got into all this. So I think what I'm going to do first is introduce Karen Chandler and ask her the first question. How does humanitarian demining impact food security around the world?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that.
Because she's the foremost authority as to why we are doing this and the very much importance of where we need to begin.
Great. So I think one of the most stark examples right now that we have in the world is the situation in Ukraine, where at least 25,000 square kilometers of agricultural land have been contaminated by Russia's unjust and illegal invasion of Ukraine. And so when you think about what can happen in that land, no one can go in and plant in that land, and 81 million people globally depend on that land for food. So if it can't be planted, it just lies fallow. And that's one of the reasons why it's so critical to support this work. The United States is very proud to be the world's largest single financial supporter of conventional weapons destruction, which means unexploded ordnance removal and landmine removal around the world. And in Ukraine so far, we've spent about $182 million since Russia's invasion trying to make this agricultural land and infrastructure safe so that people can go in and plant. But you need to be able to have access to the land. You need to be able to have water access, which means both the land and infrastructure sites. And all of this spirals into effect on global food security, because if you're not able to plant the wheat, then you're not able to get the wheat out and then feed millions of people globally.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And again, this building was envisioned after the Vietnam War, yet 80% of Vietnam still remains riddled with landmines. Can you tell us about that, and then how we can take that into farming and to agriculture and peace through agriculture in Quang Tri province?
Thank you, Heidi. Yeah, coming from Vietnam and the mine action work that we're still continuing to do there demonstrates to me how important it is that we're partnering with agricultural organizations and partners to make sure that when we're clearing the land of explosive ordnance and landmines in Vietnam and around the world, that then we can maximize the impact of that by making sure that we're introducing and supporting climate smart agriculture so that people can really have that choice and dignity over the land that they're using. They've been not able to use that land productively because of the contamination and the threat of explosive ordnance. And after we clear it, it's really important then that it goes on to be productive. And we're seeing that in Vietnam. There's instances of, people being able to bring infrastructure into agriculture, irrigation systems so they can have more rice crops per year. And also then the change in communities economically and how important women are in that process. We've heard so much today around the importance of women in agriculture, and that's also the case in mine action. And it's something that we continue, as you see on the stage, to invest in equity and diversity in what we're doing to make sure that women are central to the voice of what we're doing, to make sure that not only within mine action, so women are out demining and leading in that and the change that makes, and they're having that voice in that, but then also that prioritization of land and where we're working, that we're having that conversation with women in that space to make sure that we're clearing land that's impacting on people who need it most and impacting on those communities and those people.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And Jonathan, I'd like to ask you the question, how do landmines fit into the larger geopolitical landscape?
Okay. Let's start the geopolitical. So landmines are in Egypt, Angola, Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq, Cambodia, Mozambique, Bosnia, Croatia, Somalia, Eritrea, Sudan, Philippines, Kuwait, Mali, Chad, Pakistan, and Ukraine. If the landmines were removed from Afghanistan and Cambodia, it would double the agricultural production. So that's how it fits in right away. And the morality of it is over 80% of the victims are civilians, not military personnel. So landmines, because of their indiscriminate effect, are per se really violating customary international law, causes unnecessary suffering, can't distinguish between combatants and civilians. So that was codified, the prohibition was codified, yeah, absolutely.
Amen.
Was codified in 1980 in a protocol to the Convention on the Prohibition on the Use of Certain Conventional Weapons that may be deemed to be excessively injurious or to have indiscriminate effect. That's actually the name of the treaty. Imagine that. Short form, the Convention on Conventional Weapons. And Protocol 2 to that prohibits the use of these weapons against civilians, the use that's non-detectable, and so plastic ones that you can't, they're hard to find, booby-trapped bodies, things like that, and the deployment of these weapons in fields that can't be identified and easily removed. Now, in Ukraine, this is precisely what Russia's doing. And Russia and the United States and Ukraine are parties to that protocol. So Russia is clearly violating international law, a treaty that they have signed. The United States is abiding by that treaty, and in fact, our country, to its credit, is abiding to the terms of the Landmines Convention, the treaty that we all know about, won the Nobel Peace Prize with Jody Williams, right? But we are accepting, which calls for no production, no possession, getting rid of them. But we say, but we're going to keep, we have an interest in keeping the right to put them into the Korean Peninsula. We don't have them there right now, but we maintain the right to do that. Because we have not joined the 164 nations that are parties to the Landmine Treaty, including all of our NATO allies, all of the members of the European Union. We haven't joined that treaty. Because of that, we're constrained in making the powerful moral argument to the world that Russia's conduct in Ukraine is both illegal and immoral. And people care about morality. They care about consistency. And as an American, from an American perspective in geopolitics, we're the first country created by the rule of law. So we can either have an international policy based on ad hocism, or through the value of the rule of law. And I say, because Joe Biden and this administration, unlike the previous administration, has extolled the virtues of the Landmine Treaty and says we want to get there, we need to push to get us there and ratify and join the Landmines Convention so that we'll have moral coherence in our international affairs.
And can I maybe just add that MAG was the co-laureate for the Nobel Peace Prize for its work on the Mine Ban Treaty, and it's something obviously we advocate for strongly to make sure that we continue to have a world that's following this rule of law.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that comment. And again, I've demined with the brave women deminers in Vietnam, and the day that Ambassador Kenneth Quinn passed the torch to Ambassador Branstad, I invited him at the World Food Prize to join me in a minefield. He said yes. And he actually went to Vietnam with me, and with the women deminers, together we placed our thumb on January 6, 2020, with a vision for eradicating landmines. So thank you again. I want to acknowledge the brave women deminers of Vietnam who cannot be here because they're doing their work in the field. So thank you. Now, our most distinguished guest, we're going to work through a translator and his dog. And the dog I must also bring into this room because I want to pull all the elephants down from the ceiling. And, as I mentioned, landmines, it takes 8 pounds typically to detonate. The average weight of a newborn child, it doesn't discriminate with a child running across a field or the boot of a soldier. But it's also the 8 pounds that it would take to detonate an animal. Perhaps it's the only cow that feeds the family. And what happens when somebody loses a limb? The hatred continues on for generations. So, with that, my most distinguished guests, and thank you again to my country and to the U.S. Embassy in Angola, who performed a miracle this Holy Week and supported your visas to be here. We heard this on Friday night, so they're not in the program. Michal, I have to shout out to you. You have worked so hard, and we were holding our breath till the last hour. So, Michal, here's our milagro. So I'd like to ask you, what was it like to go and become the first woman deminer?
Qual é a sua opinião de ter sido a primeira mulher em trabalhar como desminagem?
A minha opinião foi orgulho.
For her, in her opinion, it was a big source of pride to be the first woman deminer.
Sim, porque foi trabalho considerado só para os homens. Então, eu sendo mulher, fazendo aquele trabalho, me senti pouco orgulhosa, bem dizer.
Given that daunting task and being a woman, she just felt pride in being able to do this.
Não foi fácil, mas não é impossível.
It wasn't easy, but it was not impossible.
Sim. Dá medo antes da formação, mas depois da formação, dá coragem e a dedicação para mostrar quem é a mulher numa sociedade.
So before training, you're obviously apprehensive, have a little bit of fear. Afterwards, you have courage and pride in being able to show what a woman is made of when it comes to these endeavors.
Foi em 2018 que nós cursamos e depois de 2 anos eu fui promovida como a chefe da equipa. Não foi fácil dirigir as pessoas que têm a idade avançada que você e onde que tem muitos homens e as mulheres.
So she entered the course 6 years ago in 2018, took 2 years to do all this before becoming a team lead. And as a team lead, one of her experiences was trying to navigate a world where people who are either male or older than her had to listen to her and follow her directions. Again, a point of pride.
Depois de 1 ano, vem a formação de IOD. IOD que é a destruição de higiene que contém explosivo. Então, aí aprovei mais para ficar supervisora, até o dia que estou vos falando.
So then she took the EOD course, the Explosive Ordnance course, and that's how she got promoted to supervisor, again, where she is today, and I'm very proud of the work she did.
Como a minha missão é de salvar a vida e construir o futuro, continuei nessa luta.
So her mission is to save lives and build a healthy future, a better future.
Sim. Falando do nosso trabalho, não é fácil, porque quando a pessoa não memoriza bem, com pequeno erro, pode perder a vida.
Talking about her work is not easy because one team member making the slightest of errors could result in the loss of life.
Mas como no lado que nós vivemos, leste de Angola, é uma área que foi muito combatida durante a guerra. É onde começou a guerra e é onde que terminou a guerra.
And she's talking about that area of Angola where the war began and where the war ended has been the most challenging one to work because that's where most of the explosives were located.
Significa que aquela terra é impossível construir, cultivar ou fazer uma outra atividade.
So this makes it so difficult to either build, cultivate, or participate in any other activity in these lands if they continue to be mined, which was the situation at the end of the war.
Mas depois da desminagem, disponibilizar os meios e fazer o trabalho, hoje Angola está a contar com número pequeno de deficientes de morte causado para os restos de explosivo que a guerra deixou.
So now that all this time has passed since the efforts began, those rates of incidents in Angola are as low as they have been.
Aquela parte hoje, a gente está a construir as escolas, as igrejas, as armazéns e estão pensando fazer agricultura bem grande que está nos fazer sentar como uma tema aqui.
So the fruits of this labor, we're building schools, churches, stores, and above all, vast land to be able to cultivate.
Significa, através do nosso trabalho, esse tema vai ter o sentido, porque teremos uma terra livre de higiene que contém explosivos e a gente pode cultivar à vontade.
And now this opportunity to cultivate gives them a sense of purpose after all these efforts.
Oh, thank you so much, Ngoie. And Ngoie said something to me after we detonated the mines. Angola is a country 80% dependent upon agriculture for jobs, yet conversely, the most heavily mined country in Africa. But it has the potential to feed sub-Saharan Africa as the food comes up from South Africa to the port of Luanda. So when she gets her job done, she said, when I'm out of a job, because I'm going to take out all the landmines, can I come work for you? So as a new VAX champion, again, remember the lesson, vision for adapted crops and soil. I'm not going to just use this as an award to put on a shelf. Ambassador Branstad, I told you I'd harness change. And California, we lasso that when you ask us, not just the Texans. But so our next wonderful guest here is Janete. And Janete, you have left your dearest 3 children, aged 10, 8, and 5, to be here. What was it like to spend International Women's Day with me in a minefield with a reporter who should stand up for a moment, Arlette, who came out? This is the #1 news anchor for Angola Public Television. You know, when they ask you your blood type before you walk into a minefield, doesn't matter if you're a journalist, Republican, Democrat, or the color of your hand. But this is my hero. She had it go on International Women's Day all over the country, and again, applied for the visa, and you're here. So here's to Milagros. And with any good luck, this is going to go national again. We've got Chevron and other oil companies off the shore, well, waiting to be public-private partnerships. So, yeah, obrigado. Thank you. Janete, tell us your story.
Então, Janete, a senhora Heidi quer saber como foi a experiência de ter passado o Dia Internacional da Mulher num campo como os médios da Angola, como ela. Como foi a experiência, na sua opinião?
Uma vez, muito obrigado para nós chegar neste local. Não foi fácil, é muito difícil para chegar aqui à América.
Once
Muito
again,
obrigada.
thank you. It wasn't easy to get here to the U.S.
Pela primeira vez, eu fiz primeiro o curso. Depois de fazer o curso em 2018, foi dia 1 de maio de 2018. Não foi fácil no meu curso que eu fiz, porque sendo uma mulher, é muito difícil nesse trabalho. Também, ao começar, foi muito difícil a ouvir a informação nas pessoas, vendo vídeo, nas pessoas falando que sobre o trabalho da desminagem é muito difícil para nós mulheres. Mas eu fiz isso tudo e cheguei nesta posição.
So, Janete describing this experience 6 years ago, overwhelmed by all this training material, videos, speeches, instruction manuals, how to clear minds, and being a woman in this society. And 6 years later, here she is, a woman who was able to do this.
So again, we want to loop this all back into the business of peace, but there are business opportunities. Fear not, because the United States, the day actually I was receiving the World Food Prize, October 23rd, a very important treaty was being signed, an agreement between the United States, between the African Development Bank, a fellow laureate of mine, and the European Union. And that is to establish what's called the Libido Corridor, which will run from Angola through Zambia into the DRC. But as I was told by Nelson, your director of country director, is that 60% of that land is mined to build the train. So we're going to have to get some work done so we can create corridors of peace and get the business and trade going and get you back to agriculture. And yes, you do have a job with me once I get in there. And we'll lead with the shovel rather than the gun. So let's see, we have about a minute. Oh goodness, we've just gone. Yeah, well, let's do a lightning round. Comments about the brave women deminers, and what do people need to do to take something out of this U.S. Institute of Peace room and bring it to the world?
Sure. Well, I will just say that I think demining is critical because it enables people to return to their homes. It enables agriculture. It enables jobs for people, whether that is women or men. And I'm very proud that we have so many female deminers, women deminers, that are working with us as part of U.S. funded programs. Women in that role are so critical because of the fact that they can serve at all aspects of the organization, and they can lead peace and security in their communities from a new way. In terms of what Heidi was talking about the public-private partnerships, this is also another critical aspect that I'd like you to take away, that we have spent, as the US government, over $5 billion already to demine the world since 1993. But in most of these countries, it is a decades-long process, and there are billions and billions more that will be needed. So please do consider public-private partnerships as a way to go forward as well.
Thank you, thank you. And what are your closing comments? If you had a dream, what would be your dream as a takeaway?
I mean, I think it's that continued investment in mine action and the links and the change that makes. It's such a fundamental area that cross-cuts so many of the sustainable development goals. It's not, it's about peace and justice, but it's around no poverty, food security, access to health, education. It's so cross-cutting that if we don't invest in it and we don't support it, we're not going to be able to achieve all the other sustainable development goals that we're targeting for.
Thank you. Jonathan, lightning round.
We have to accelerate the removal of landmines. At the current rate, it will take at least a millennium plus another 100 years to do it. The most important thing that could be done to do that would be to emphasize the greatest gift that America has given the world, which is the rule of law. And that the best thing that we can do is to contact our senators, contact the administration, and say, since the U.S. is doing the good thing, we should do it under the rule of law. Push the ratification of the treaty banning landmines as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And if you had a dream, what would be your dream? 2 sentences.
Brevemente, si tuviésemos un sono, ¿qué sería eso?
What would be your dream? What do you want to tell America? Your first trip, your first airplane trip. It's just amazing. What would you like to tell America? What is your
¿Qué dirían para Estados Unidos en cuanto a seus sonos?
Vou falar pela primeira vez que esse sonho não foi fácil para chegar nessa posição. Estou agradecendo muito a Deus para chegar nessa posição, também a trabalhar assim neste momento.
The journey was not easy, and she has God to thank for where she is today.
Ok.
Como sendo sapadora, a trabalhar no campo minado, a trabalhar junto com os homens, sendo mulher, é muito difícil para mim, mas consegui com o treinamento que nós fizemos no campo minado. É para conseguir, neste momento, já tenho 3 filhos, estou a conseguir fazer também isso, ajudar também a minha família. E na comunidade também estou a gostar muito do trabalho que estamos a fazer nós em Angola. Quase ajudamos muita coisa, estava a fazer, cultivar, fazer a escola, a estrada estava bem fechada, mas isso tudo nós removemos as minas. Agora estava gostando muito. E isso que eu estou a falar até agora. Estou a dar conselho também às mulheres. Epa, não só para nós, as mulheres também é a mesma coisa. Muito obrigado por esses trabalhos que estão a fazer. Vocês também um dia vão fazer isso. Muito obrigada.
So Janete mentioned again this difficult journey, but also this pride working next to men, learning about demining, and now the results. Her being able to raise her 3 children in a community that can now cultivate and build. And again, thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Ok. Eu posso explicar se tiver um sonho para explicar nos outros. Quando tens amor para fazer um trabalho que a maioria das pessoas que não são família, não são conhecidos, que vão aproveitar, tem que fazer esse trabalho com amor.
If you're going to perform a job for complete strangers, you have to perform this task with love.
Porque lutar com as pessoas, no meio das pessoas que têm as ideias diferentes, educação diferente, comportamento diferente, e estás a fazer um trabalho que não é só a sua família, não é só o seu país, é muita gente que vai aproveitar. Então tem que fazer aquele trabalho com amor, porque amanhã e depois da manhã vai trazer fruto para o mundo.
She reiterates that she's doing work with people, different background, different ideologies, but you have to realize when you do this work with love, it's going to bring a lot of fruitful results to the entire world, not just community, nation, the world.
Porque esse é o nosso trabalho. Mesmo a pessoa não vai aproveitar outras coisas, mas tem as pessoas que têm aquele espírito de fazer turismo. Mas se termina, a pessoa vai ter medo e vai morrer. Mas se não termina, a pessoa pode sair daqui até visitar Angola, que não está livre de mina.
Yeah, so when there were mines, and of course there are still mines, your dreams were limited. Without them, it's just going to be limitless. She's able to visit here in the U.S. and you're able to visit Angola.
Yes.
Por isso, aproveito essa ocasião a agradecer a Heidi, que pensou, e os membros que pensou a nós hoje estar aqui falando convosco.
Very thankful to Heidi and all the members who made it possible for both of them to be here speaking to you today.
And I will close this session by sharing my dream. When I graduated from high school in 1976 at San Rafael High in California, it was the bicentennial year. The 250th birthday of America will be 2026. That is the year of the woman farmer, and let's lead with our shovels and dig out all these landmines, and peace through agriculture. Love will lead the way.